Good morning and welcome to the Monday Morning Marketing Podcast. I'm Esther.
And I'm Melanie.
And today we're joined by Christine Gritmon, social media personal branding strategist. Welcome, Christine.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here with us. So, personal branding.
Yes.
What is that?
I like to say that your personal brand is the version of you that lives in people's heads. And you want there to be a version of you that lives in people's heads so that, you're known and you take up some of that real estate. And so that when they are ready to buy or when they need you, they think of you.
So personal branding, is it essential to have for business owners? Because ultimately this podcast is about marketing. So do you need to have a personal branding to market yourself?
The short answer is no, but I think that it is an incredible advantage and that not having it is putting yourself at a completely unnecessary disadvantage. And what I mean by that is, generally speaking, business is all about relationships. It's about trust. Nothing that we do is unique. There's definitely other people who do what we do, no matter how special we think we are. And so that means that the real point of difference isn't necessarily what we do, and it may not even be how we do it. The only true point of difference that we have that no one can take away and that no one can equal is the people involved, ourselves. And there are a lot of business owners who really don't want to put themselves out there, who really do want the business to speak for itself and they want to stay behind the scenes. But they could be such an asset at building relationships, at developing that trust, at developing thought leadership, because what thought leadership ultimately is trust, right? It's saying this is someone who I trust knows what they're talking about. So while I don't think a business is doomed to fail if the people involved, if the powers that be aren't putting their personal brands out there, I do think that it is just such a huge advantage to be able to build those relationships and build that trust with a person in mind.
Gotcha.
So if a person, for example, I have an agency and people know me through the agency, but they also know me on my own. Mm-hmm. Can you have that? Can you have like one person? Obviously, I'm also with the podcast and I have other side hustles or whatever. How does that work then with your personal branding, or does that dilute the branding of, say, the agency?
I think the real key there is to make sure that the personal brand points to the agency, but the agency does not have to necessarily point as much towards the personal brand. I feel like the agency is the product. The agency is what earns you money. The agency is the entity that people are ultimately hiring. But the person can build relationships. The person can be an advocate of that agency. And the mere fact that they are a person who runs an agency can in turn bolster their thought leadership credentials. It can kind of make them a little bit more legitimized because it's saying, oh, this person knows what they're talking about, not just because I've seen them pop up all over the place, not just because I know they're active, and not just because I've heard them say smart things, but also they have that added legitimacy of they actually do this. They run an agency. That's great. So they can certainly support each other. But I would say it should be a little bit uneven. I feel like the personal brand should support the agency more heavily than the agency, which has the possibility of becoming much greater than a person, should serve the personal brand. Does that make sense?
It did, but I'll probably have to listen to that again. In fairness.
I'll draw you a little picture. It's a little flow chart.
Well, you've actually made me rethink how I network, actually. Because when I go to networking events, sometimes people say, so what, explain to us who you are and what you do. Mm-hmm. And depending on the type of networking I'm doing, sometimes I'll say I do just one thing, which is Stomp, which, would be my main hustle, if you like. And then I've got these other hustles as well. And if you look at my LinkedIn profile, which is where an awful lot of people actually start with their personal branding to a certain extent, or start thinking about it anyway. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I end up saying all the things I do. which is a journalist and an Agora Pulse ambassador and this and then that. So apart from saying I'm really busy, am I actually doing myself any favours?
So this is a problem a lot of people face, and I certainly face it as well, which is that the more stuff you throw at people, the less they're going to know what to pay attention to, the less they're going to know what action to take, the less they're going to be able to sort of follow a pathway in and or latch on to something that they really associate with you. So it's tricky, though, because at the same time, it kind of feels like, oh, if I don't put that thing out there, then that's cutting me off from the people who might connect to that thing. Mm-hmm. So it is tricky. I think that really the key there is to really, know your brand values, know your kind of brand pillars, know what your brand stands for, and find a way to connect those seemingly disparate things. Because if you are doing X, Y, and Z, all these other things, there's got to be some common thread that connects them of your interest or of your skills, hopefully, ideally. So I would say emphasize the commonality of them so that it doesn't seem like you're scattered and all over the place, so that it seems like, oh, this is all emanating from kind of one consistent source, and I know what this brand stands for, and everything they're doing is supporting that thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's, such great advice already, Christine. Thank you. And we're only just getting started. So I hope everyone has their pen and paper at the ready. Otherwise, just listen back.
So, well, let's throw a couple of case studies at Christine here.
Let's do it.
Okay. So let's say you're a startup and you're going into the retail sector. Okay. And maybe you've run other businesses before, maybe something completely different to what you're doing today. Okay. So let's say you're a hairdresser. Okay. And you've run your own business quite successfully for a number of years, and you decide to do something completely different, some clothing, let's say. So this person's already got an established, I suppose, brand. People already perceive.
They're known as a hairdresser.
Exactly. So how do they shift? And they're not giving up the hairdressing because it's a brand new business. They're not just going to stop. They need to make some money out of it first. So how do they shift and adjust? Because it's not just shifting, is it? It's adjusting the focus. What would you recommend to that startup person?
So tell me some more about the new business.
It's gym wear, ladies' gym wear. And it's the brand itself is suitable for sort of all ages and sizes. It's kind of, there's no specific niche, if you like, but it ranges from sort of small to very, very large, let's say.
Okay, so this person is still all about helping women look and feel their best. So that's certainly a connection right there.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of their presence and their, knownness as a hairdresser, do people know them or do they know their work?
Both.
Both. Okay, both is good, because both means that the hairdresser can appear in their own stuff for the gym wear, with hair looking fabulous, of course. If there are existing loyal customers or people who have appeared in their social media presence or anything like that regarding their hair business, maybe those same people can appear in some of the gym wear stuff and become advocates. That would actually be fantastic. If this person, you said they are still doing hairdressing because they have to pay the bills while they do. Okay, in that case, I would say you don't want to push that on people. If you sit down with a hairdresser, you don't want your hairdresser suddenly starting to do a, long sales pitch on their gym wear. You don't want to feel sold to while you're obtaining a service that you're paying for. But at the same time, hairdressers have their loyal clients who have become friends. And so I would certainly leverage those personal relationships where comfortable and where appropriate to help kind of become ambassadors for the new brand. I would say take the people who have made you successful as a hairdresser and bring them with you as part of this new adventure on yet another way to help women look and feel fabulous. And needless to say, every time you show a woman in the gym wear, make sure her hair looks fantastic.
Good point.
But I think in general, the overall brand can be kind of spun together towards self-care and towards, helping women put their best foot forward and feel confident in themselves and feel like they're taking care of themselves. I think that there's a lot of common ground between those two brands, to the point where maybe this is a time to expand to consider yourself a lifestyle brand. I mean, it could go all sorts of directions depending on how much work the person wants to do. But at the very least, I would certainly leverage the fact that they already have the right audience. Their audience as a hairdresser is probably largely female. Their audience for these women's gym clothes is largely female. So leverage that.
Wow.
I'd never have picked, two completely seemingly separate things that can have such a common ground.
Oh, absolutely.
That's great.
So,
Melanie, you have another
I
case
do.
study?
I have a second case study.
All right.
And that is the likes of us, ladies.
Mm-hmm.
Sole traders. Okay, so the hairdresser, most of the time they have a team of people, and that helps understand your brand because everybody has to speak from the same song sheet. But when it's just yourself and you're a social media type person.
I'm familiar with this type of person.
Really?
So am I.
It's mad, isn't it?
I've met a couple.
But let's think. Sometimes your personal branding can get mixed up with your business branding.
Oh, yes.
And it even though, let's just pretend I'm going to just stick with one brand here, the Monday Morning Marketing Podcast or Stomp or The Journalist. So let's just pick one. But what's the best way to protect your personal brand and keep it separate from your business brand? Or should you, in fact, separate them?
Large caveat, this is a do as I say, not as I do, because I am a total, unplanned mishmash. And people actually do love it in my case. People love it when I bring the personal in. No one ever says, I wish you'd talk more about marketing, but at least not to my face. They probably just unfollow, and that's fine. But so this is do as I say, not as I do. Don't go looking. I mean, do go looking at my profiles, please. Christine Gritmon, C. Gritmon. But, don't judge it through this lens. But I will say, first of all, you need to decide how much of your personal life you're even comfortable sharing. Because one thing that freaks people out and intimidates them about social media is they're like, but I'm not really that public type of person. And if I do social media for my business, does that mean I have to show the world what I'm eating for breakfast? And no, it does not. Being human on social media is extraordinarily important. Nobody wants to follow someone who is all business all the time. And especially they don't want to follow somebody who's selling all the time. However, different people will follow you for different reasons. And it is perfectly okay if you decide to put boundaries that make you comfortable around what you keep to yourself and what you keep private. The way around that is you can be human without sharing personal things. And the way you can do that is by humanizing your stories. If you are telling a business story, try to phrase it in the form of, I was talking to a person or I was talking to a client, to the degree that you can without compromising their privacy. Or, just engaging with people, engaging with other people's content, with other people's posts is a great way to be very human on social media and to be personal in making those connections without sharing whatever feels private to you. Now then, that's people who are less comfortable sharing too much personal stuff. Now let's go the other direction. There are people who are oversharers where it's all personal stuff and it feels like I followed you because you're in my profession or because you're a thought leader in your profession and all I'm seeing is your dog. So that can go the other way. I would say in that situation, there's a couple things to be done. One of them is see if you maybe want to separate out those accounts. A lot of people don't want to manage two sets of accounts, and that's fine. But that might be a good solution for some people where they love having someplace to share their personal stuff, but it really is getting their business stuff off track. one good guideline is a very quick scroll, or if you're on Instagram, look at like your top 6 posts. They talk about top 9, but really with the story highlights there, it's more like top 6. At a quick glance, would someone get any impression of what you do? And you should always be aware of what that mix looks like of your most recent handful of posts. Again, do as I say, not as I do. But you know, and some of those can be personal. I mean, some of those even can be your dog. I know people who have decided that their pet is kind of one of their recurring elements, and people associate that animal with their personal brand, and that is totally fine. But just always be aware of what that most recent mix looks like, because any post that you make, any moment in time of your profile, any of that could be someone's only impression of your brand if they're not hooked in. And you want to make sure that it doesn't mean that every single post needs to be super branded and on brand and about business. I mean, you can have that occasional dog post, but just kind of look at the most recent handful at any given time. And if the most recent handful of posts, if it requires too much scrolling to get to the point, then maybe reconsider your mix of content. And again, if you are all business, that's totally fine too. There's ways to be human and to give people something to latch onto with that, just by showing your personality. Showing your personality and exposing your personal life are not the same thing.
Agreed.
Yeah. And well, that's where there's a little bit of a struggle with the agency that I run, because it's more serious and I'm not serious.
Well,
that's
serious?
a separate,
really?
I would think that's a separate accounts circumstance.
Oh yeah, no, I don't even post my personal stuff. It's too much effort. But yeah, so
but
I
be
totally
human
get
in
having
those
a mascot.
interactions though. Yeah, but be human in those interactions though. Even if you're a very serious agency, again, human doesn't have to mean silly. You know, human doesn't have to mean unprofessional. Just make sure that people feel like they're not just getting a load of prefabricated marketing messages. Make them feel like there's a person behind the profiles.
Yeah, definitely.
And that person might be serious.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people who do sort of feel, well, every time that they put up their pet, they do get a lot more interaction and a lot more traction. So that's why, you know, people sort of use their animals as their sort of team mascot or their business.
I just got a great reaction to my overweight self in a bikini. But it's, you know, it's a high-waisted retro style bikini, and retro style is part of my thing. And confidence is a big part of my business and brand also, giving confidence to other people and having confidence myself. So I feel like it's on brand. But but at the same time, that's not social media advice, is it? No. You know, it's giving people a sense of, look, I'm walking the talk. It's my feeling. Anyway.
Yeah. And I do, you know, definitely be human on social media is, you know, it's called social media for a reason.
Yes. And being human doesn't have to, it's not the same necessarily as vulnerability. It's not the same necessarily as, you know, being an oversharer or ignoring your own sense of privacy. It just means relate as a human being. You wouldn't go telling your life story to someone at a networking meeting either, but you would talk to them, right?
Do you know, you've made a very valid point there, actually. I know some people speak to me about, oh, what should I put up on LinkedIn? And I mentioned to them, you know, comment as you would at a networking meeting. People think, oh, I'm on LinkedIn because they put congrats on your new job, or happy birthday, all those auto
or they
remote
clicked
responses.
Like.
Oh.
Like that does anything.
And it's great. It sees you posting, which is something you wouldn't have done without that prompt. But that's not connecting with people. That's not, you know, building a rapport or a relationship. And that's what branding is all about, isn't it? So to those businesses that listen to us all over the globe, do you have like maybe 3 top tips for them to take away? Yes.
So one big tip I would say that I think too many people overlook is don't engage. Sorry. engagement doesn't just mean reply to the people who are engaging with your stuff. Engagement doesn't just mean start a conversation with your posts. Yes, you should do that. But the biggest part of engagement, the place where the riches in engagement strategy really lie, are going outside of your posts, outside of your content, outside of your profiles, to other people's. And, a like means nothing. A like is seen by the person whose profile it is. A follow means nothing. It's seen by the person whose profile it is. If you can comment, if you can try to make a habit of going out there, finding something that you have just like a couple words of actual thought on, and go comment, you've done several things. You have exposed yourself to everyone who sees that post because they will see your comment and they might click over and check out who you are. That is gold. But you've also led with value. You've shown up to that other person's profile bearing the gift of engagement. You've shown up to the party with a bottle of nice wine. I mean, that's really how you build relationships, not by just clicking like and doing a follow for follow game and then unfollowing them a few days later when they haven't followed you back. No. Put comments there, get into conversations there, find other people in that person's audience. I mean, that's really where it is. If you just spend all your time, with your blinders on, just looking at your own stuff and your own community that you already have, you're not going to grow. So that's the biggest tip that I have. And the other two I'll make much shorter.
It's fine. We've got time.
The other two are, this has been a big kick I've been on lately. I'm actually preparing a few talks specifically on this premise, which is that people feel like it's sort of selfish or self-absorbed or show-offy to kind of rock their personal brand online and put themselves out there in a bigger way. But it is the opposite. It is selfish to hide yourself from the people who need you. If you are so hung up in your own issues, whether it's feeling like you're not good enough or whether feeling like you're totally good enough, but it'll look braggy if you, put yourself out there, whatever it is, if you let your own hangups get in the way of allowing the people who need you to find you, that is selfish. So think about who needs you. Think about what they need. Think about putting yourselves in their path because they need you. So that's the second tip. And then the third tip I'd say is it is better to get really, really good on a social media platform that you like and are comfortable with and are getting reactions on than it is to half-ass it on all the platforms. I would say figure out where you're comfortable, figure out what's moving the needle for you, figure out what you will actually maintain without it feeling like torture. And, feel free to do that. I hereby give you permission to half-ass your Facebook if you hate Facebook.
Good woman.
Just as long as you're doing something else, like be somewhere, do something. But if you hate Facebook, you know what? Figure out Twitter. If you despise LinkedIn, figure out Instagram. Do something and do it well. Figure out what you will actually get yourself to do rather than letting yourself get bogged down and intimidated and overwhelmed by feeling like you have to be everywhere and hating it the whole time.
Brilliant. We couldn't have said those any better ourselves.
That's why I'm here.
Especially the last part. Well, Christine, it's been an absolute joy talking to you today. Where can our listeners find you, follow you, and learn more about you?
So I'm the only Christine Gritmon out there, which is great. I had to share my maiden name, but I've had Christine Gritmon all to myself for the past 13 years. And that's Gritmon, grit like when something's gritty, and Mon like Monday. And I'm a little mixed up on the handles though, because I'm C Gritmon on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Christine Gritmon Inc. on Facebook and YouTube. I'm Christine Gritmon, of course, on LinkedIn, and I'm Gritmon.com. Also, one very good place to find me is every week I have two things that I do. I do a Twitter chat called Chat About Brand on Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern. And then on Fridays, I have a live interview show that pairs with it called Let's Talk About Brand. And that's Fridays at 12 noon Eastern time. And this is airing in August. I'm actually on hiatus from the show in August, but I will be back that first full week of September. So make sure that on Tuesday, September 7th, you tune in on Twitter for Chat About Brand. And on Friday, September 10th, you tune in all sorts of places for Let's Talk About Brand, which is a live interview show with an expert.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Christine. Invaluable information, a great source of up-to-date current information, and it's fabulous that you're doing this Twitter chat as well, because that will keep people, constantly rethinking their branding all the time.
I learned so much from the chat. I love it's a hugely global community. We get people from many continents. It's just such an amazing community, and people come back week after week, and I learned so much from my Chat About Brand community. Originally, I had planned for the chat to support the live stream show and to really draw audience over there, but the chat has actually become a bigger thing, and I think part of that is because it's bringing out such cool thoughts from such amazing people who share them week after week.
Brilliant.
We'll be sure to drop in some week on Chat About Brand as well. And thank you, Christine, for taking time out today to talk to us. We'll be back next week with more Monday Morning Marketing. Bye-bye.
Bye.